This is the turning point in human civilization.
In Canada, we don't physically print the bills. The currency is issued by banks as debt in the form of loans. And that money, when businesses or people take out loans and mortgages, gets digitally entered in their accounts and then added to our existing money supply.
When we talk about the banks, don't get angry at a teller. They have no idea any of this agenda is going on. That you walk into a bank, try this tomorrow, ask them how money's created. They don't know. They have no idea. It's created as debt through loans. So when you go in to get a mortgage for a house, and let's say in this province you're going to need a mortgage of $500,000 to buy a house, and then it takes you 15 or 20 years to pay it off. You pay them back $700,000, let's say, rough figures. Everyone would answer the question of how much money did the bank make with an answer of $200,000. They gave you $500, you paid them back $700. Well, the reality is, they made $700,000 because it didn't cost them any money to type $500K into your account in the first place. The money that they lent you did not exist 5 minutes prior to you asking for it. We all think that when we go get a loan at a bank that they're giving us money out of their pile. They've sort of judged that we're worthy and said, okay, we're going to give you some of ours. We have like 10 billion, but you can have $500,000. That's not how it works. They just digitally enter the money into your account as a debt that you will pay off over time with real money. And then they enter it into their books as a credit because it's profit for them. And when this money gets added to our existing currency, the overall supply, it gets its value from the existing money supply. So if you have $1 trillion and then you print off another trillion, it's not all worth the same. It's now worth half as much as it used to be. $1 trillion wouldn't buy you as much as it did when there was only 1 trillion, if there's 2 trillion. Well, what they've done in the United States, for instance, and all around the world in the last year, they printed off trillions and trillions of dollars in paper money, and then in Canada in electronic money through loans. And eventually, it's a Ponzi scheme where the money ends up being worthless.
There's no reason for us to have a plan where somebody lies and our best option is to wait 4 years and then vote them out and bring in someone else. Don't think that any of these parties that we have voted for historically are looking out for our best interest, or they would have told us about the banking.
We've in effect already been taken over. Banks have conspired with our governments to privatize our resources, collapse our economies, and consolidate their empire.
Jamie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Murray Dobbin wrote an article a few months back in the Vancouver Sun entitled "The Myth of the Canadian Banking System," and he described how the banks have already been bailed out in advance for the coming housing market collapse. There's really only one issue, Michael, and that is who controls the amount of currency in circulation. And on this continent, those people are unelected. If we don't do anything to address that, we're really sort of never going to have say over any of the other issues.
But, and here's your caveat, those that are elected appoint those that run the central banks. In fact, it was Obama who reappointed Ben Bernanke, and it was the Prime Minister here, or his office or government, that appointed the Governor of the Bank of Canada. No, they aren't elected, and I say thank God for that. Sorry, Mr. Dobbin, but I don't want somebody who's running for that office.
President Obama today nominated Ben Bernanke for a second four-year term as Federal Reserve Chairman. The president called his actions on the global financial crisis bold and out of the box.
As an expert on the causes of the Great Depression, I'm sure Ben never imagined that he would be part of a team responsible for preventing another. But because of his background, his temperament, his courage, and his creativity, that's exactly what he has helped to achieve. And that is why I am reappointing him to another term as chairman of the Federal Reserve.
That's why they say, permit me to issue a country's currency and I don't care who makes its laws. If you're the guy with the printer, you're the decider.
A lot of people think that the Federal Reserve is already part of the government. They're not. It's controlled by cliques of unelected, unaccountable bankers meeting in secret. Most of these people have never even been through the formality of a Senate hearing or a Senate confirmation. They claim that they're part of the U.S. government. They masquerade as if they were part of the U.S. government. But in reality, this is a purely private operation.
Worldwide, we all use the same debt-based monetary system.
The only way, really, America can get out of the current mess is you've got to shut the Fed down completely, get rid of the Fed. You've got to put the money printing mechanism back under the roof of the federal government instead of outsourcing it to the Fed.
Sit here and look at Greece and say, well, they retired too early or they spent too much money on social programs or socialism. It's nonsense. They can't get out of debt just like the United States can't get out of debt and Canada can't get out of debt. No country can unless you replace the governments, bring in an entirely new economic system, and cancel and delete the debts. Everyone starts from scratch.
When we come to power, and we will, we are going to delete all of these fictitious, toxic derivatives and debt totals that you and your countries owe. Because the interest that is compounding daily as we speak is on lent money that it cost these institutions nothing to give us in the first place. It's a scam.
You just don't trust anybody.
Well, let's not trust people. Let's know things.
Yeah.
We have got to a situation right now in the world where most of our decisions, whether they're military or economic or political, are allowed to proceed because the people trust those who are telling them what's happening. We have attributed credibility to certain media outlets and certain politicians, so what they say goes, whether or not it's actually the truth.
The banks are going to come to you for another bailout. Now in the United States, when they got the bailout, because they borrow the money off of a private Federal Reserve bank to bail out the banks, picture this scenario. The first bailout, we're going to have to give $700 billion to the banks to bail them out. So the banks print the money, $700 billion. Then they just divvy it up amongst themselves because that's who the bailout was for. But the government now has to pay back that loan. So it's $700 billion plus whatever. You got nothing for that, other than saving a bunch of banks so they could buy some more banks. You gave them $700 billion in the first place to bail them out. Now you're going to repay them $700 billion for the loan that you took. You're paying them twice. You're paying them twice and getting nothing. And the banks have been given the privilege to print money out of thin air. And I'll explain in detail how that works. And when you hear it, you may not understand it, or you may immediately, like I was, be like, what? No, you're kidding. We had to do something about this.
Because what you're talking about is a completely a different economic and political system.
The system is the tyrant.